Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I am pretty distraught over the ending of Arcane. I've thoroughly enjoyed the show very much, and to make me feel a little bit better, I'm wanting to do a bit of a study on the art style. I've done this before when the first season was out, it was a couple years ago I think, but I'm wanting to do it again, and I'm hoping that I can at least take away some information to help me with my webcomic a little bit, as much as I can, at least. It's a very detailed style, and I'm not going to be able to apply everything, but at least I can learn for my own personal art whenever I have the time to do that. But, sadly, I was sitting here recording all of this on my laptop, and my laptop just doesn't like me because it only saved like the last 3 minutes of the 45-minute footage I had of me sitting here going through all this, so I'm just going to recap. But anyway, so here I have a whole bunch of screen caps I took from season 2, and if you have not finished it yet, spoiler warning, I will not be checking myself. So maybe watch it first. But yeah, okay. Anyway, I have all these screen caps, and I've seen some people saying that they were like doing, I don't know if they were studying, it was like a TikTok video. They were studying or something, they were drawing Mel, and then suddenly they knew how to render, and I think that's just because they do such a good job with the art style and having soft shading and hard shading. The different textures and contrast in all of that makes it really interesting and easy to read, but also super stylized. So I kind of went through these screen caps. I didn't do every single one of them, but I went through and I kind of outlined some things with a pen. So it's not going to look very pretty by itself, but it's very interesting to look at. You can see when you break down the faces, and also I'm not only just breaking down the actual shapes of the faces, but also the shadows and different planes of the face. You can see that they use their shading to really emphasize these different planes of the face. Like Caitlin's a good example here because her cheekbones are so sharp. And then also this bridge part of her nose, you can see it's like hard right here, and they do this specifically with a lot of the noses. They kind of shade it like this part right here. I don't know what this is called. I've seen a lot of artists, especially when I was young, that did this, and I really love it, and I love to do it too, and I think it's really interesting with all of their shading. You can pick out all of the shapes here, but also if you look really closely, you can see lots of texture even in the soft parts. Like if I take this off real quick, you can look here and you can see all the different layers to the shading. Instead of just blending everything together, it's all very layered, and it makes it so interesting to look at. I think probably a good way to do this would be to use like a lasso tool. I'm not very good at using the lasso and stuff on my tablet, just because I haven't been using Flip Studio for a while, since my laptop doesn't like me and my PC is kind of out of condition right now. But I think if you kind of did something like this, and preferably like some sort of textured brush, you don't have to. You can definitely, if you're good with a round brush, you could do it if you wanted. But I think a really good way to build layers like this is using a lasso, and then you can still kind of have some soft bits right here but then have those hard edges right next to it. So you can see there. That's something that I see in almost every single character. Not just like the nose, but in lots of different places. Mel has some good example of that. Mel has very soft features, but you can still see lots of texture in the shading. And that is basically universal for every character. And also you can look at her mouth like this. Instead of making the highlights like glowy, I guess, with an airbrush, they're very hard. Hard edges, textured. You can see the shadows in her mouth here are very hard edged. And then there's some softness right here in some of the shading. There's some softness here. And this is blended, but there's texture. So that is one thing that I think makes Arcane's art look so interesting. Savika, is that how you say her name? I think so. I love the diversity in the show because not everyone is like, I don't know how to say, like a conventionally attractive person. They're all very interesting to look at and they're attractive in their own ways, and like you can appreciate them as characters more because there's so much depth to the character building that also shows in their faces and in nuances in their design. Like if we go to Jinx, right? A lot of people will compare Jinx versus Powder, and you can see that here really well. So Powder has very like wide eyes, and she does not look at all as rugged as Jinx looks. There's a lot more trauma, conflict, inner turmoil in this girl right here. And I mean, it's clearly obvious when she has the shimmer. Her eyes are a different color, and there's like the veins that come out, right? But I think also you can see her face is a lot more gaunt, and Powder is round. And I think that also says something about the character development as well, because Powder is like a softer... Is that the word? Softer character? She's not as traumatized, and she's had a lot more support in this alternate universe. She still has Vander and a lot of people except for, you know. But there's also the fact that in some scenes there are just like moments that people will talk about where Jinx kind of flickers to being Powder again, and that's just nuances in emotion that are captured so well in the show that you might not always notice it, but it's there and it adds a lot. And another thing that I love is the expressions, which I kind of went over and traced some of these shapes as well, but I love seeing a face twisted in expression like this. I feel like it's not quite as common. I don't know if that's the way to say it, but I'll see this in manga too, where a face gets really distorted when it's going through like extreme emotion. And I think some people are really scared to draw emotions like this because you get so used to being able to draw just a basic face, and that takes a lot of work to learn how to do that. I mean, this was all I could do for I don't know how long. But when you're trying to do emotions, you have to twist the face in different ways and understand how things move, like muscles of the face and bones and whatever. But here, you know, she is yelling and her jaw is hinged open more. And then here she's, I don't know how to describe this face, but it's not quite as elongated because her mouth is compressing here. I don't know what to call that. But I think it's really nice to see emotions like this, and you know, not everything is like pretty all the time, even though this still looks really pretty to me. There's just so much you can look at when you're looking at Arcane. The shapes are super important though. Super important. So I'm looking at all these different characters, right? I didn't go over every single one of them, but I was picking out things that I thought were interesting in terms of the shapes and how you can take this away and you can kind of tell who these characters are without all the context because of their defining features. And this one I really liked. I don't remember his name. I'm so sorry, I'm so bad with names. I was looking at this because of how there's so much contrast here between his shapes. He's a bigger man, right? And you can see the roundness in his body. And also he's a little older and you can see the roundness in under his eyes, right? And then he has this like longer mouth that's not, it doesn't have as much definition as probably like Savika's mouth here, where it's very angular and full. But then, contrasting that, we have this very sharp facial hair moment. What are these, mutton chops? I don't know. And his nose is also, like, this is a little box. You know, it's angular, the bridge of his nose as well. So that's a good note to take when you're designing characters. It goes the same way when you're doing like outfits and things like that. And you can also see it with, so this is Mel's brother, the projection of him, right? He looks great. I love this. And you can also really see all this texture in his face. It's a great example. I was referencing this image, I think it was yesterday or the day before. I was working on a character sheet for a character that's coming up soon in my story, and I was taking reference from the way his face is shaped and reflects light and the textures, and I love seeing the creases like this. They're very interesting to look at. But there is all this lovely texture right here. This is beautiful. I like to achieve this with some of the brushes I have in Procreate. I don't have any of these types of brushes on my Clip Studio, at least not here, because I had all that stuff on my PC. But similar thing as with this guy right here. He has a very angular beard situation. I saw this a lot in several different characters. But this is a really good shape to see for the face, like going, this is kind of like the overall shape of the face, right? And you got some nice ears. And his hair was kind of like this. That's so bad. Okay, anyway. You get the point. Anyway. Caitlin said had the same thing. The very angular facial hair. But his hair on top was very smooth. And he has very soft eyes. And I think that contrast, very good to keep in mind. So breaking down everything into shapes, very important part of the Arcane style, and then using those shapes in the different planes of the faces for shading. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about there. And then I also took a couple of screen caps on some of the different scenes and backgrounds. This is something I feel like I can't dissect quite as much because I'm not as experienced in environments as I want to be, but that's kind of why it's a good thing for me to look at. Environments take a lot of practice, and being able to create really creative scenes like this is also so useful for making storylines so dynamic. And of course, the baby, the most depressing part. Is it the most depressing part? It probably is. To me. I'm very sad about Isha. But this scene, I think it was from her perspective, but it's so childlike and playful. Especially because you can see all like this looks like colored pencil. Lots of cross-hatching happening like this. Like everything looks like it's completely in pencil. And then you got these like random lines drawn on top. And look, she has little blushies right here. That's so cute. I'm sorry, it's so pixelated. That is so cute. And this little thing right here. This is adorable. What? Hold on. That is how I thumbnail faces. I just thought this when I paused on this one on accident, and that was just the funniest thing to me. But there's just so much personality to all of this, and that is something that I think makes Arcane's style so incredible, and that's why we love it all so much. At least for me it is. And the thing with, you know, style in general, it's not so much about like learning to draw and finding your style, right? I mean, you can. People are always wanting to know about finding their style, and I think if you just look at stuff like this and you think about how you see things, that is what your style really comes down to, is your perception. Because when you're learning to draw, you're learning how to see the world and then put that on paper. And that is really the bare bones of it, right? And then that's how you learn how to stylize. Because you're the only one who can see what you see, basically, and you're trying to portray that. So what I did here, trying to go along with, you know, picking out shapes in the faces, I went into this lovely website, Reference Angle, and I kind of just went through and picked out a couple of these pictures. I love these because they're not just like, they're like just real people. They're not just models. So I like being able to get all the different features and see different types of faces. And then I pulled a few of them in here just to look at basic shapes, right? So I take out the picture underneath. This is kind of what we're left with. And what I'm trying to do more of is learning how we can pull these features and like exaggerate some things more, right? So I kind of tried here. His beard is not quite that sharp, but I'm going for the Arcane look. So I made his beard a lot sharper in my little rendition here. He kind of looks like... Okay, I need to stop. Anyway, I'm trying to learn doing this more, so I need to practice it more, definitely. But that's also why I really like using that site. I like getting all the different facial features and playing with those, because I feel like I'm not gonna find a beautiful nose like this one by just looking up a man. I kind of just end up with these beautiful models, and I want to see the exaggeration because I want more of that in my comic, because that to me is just amazing to see. I don't know what his name is. There's a Disney artist that does this really well. I'm gonna have to look it up later. I'm not gonna do it right now. If you're wanting to learn something from Arcane, I would tell you to learn this, because if you're looking at the shapes, you can shade in the shapes, of course, and you can learn the texture, but the diversity of characters, the different looks they all have, you can really tell them all apart, and you can really see so much of them in their appearance. And I don't feel like I see enough of that in animation, but that is something I strive for. So what I'm going to do now, I don't know, I can't unsee this now. I don't think I can continue with this. I'm probably going to take another reference angle image, maybe, and try to render something. At least very simply render. I'm gonna give myself maybe like an hour or two to work on it, but I'm going to do that on Procreate, so I'll be back. Yeah. So admittedly, it has taken me a bit of time to finish this portion of the video, but I'm just gonna try to keep it a little quick. You can see that I picked out a few photos from the reference angle site that I was talking about, and I just picked them out based on what I thought would be good, I guess, or easy to study for this purpose. And I quickly went in and sketched them, and I tried focusing a bit on emphasizing certain shapes that were in the photos. I did miss recording some little bits, so I apologize, but it's not that crazy. I set in some base colors, and once I set in the base colors, all I really had to do was start by like setting in some of the skin tones and then trying to do some of the shading. I was primarily using this brush pen that just comes with Procreate. It's like in the calligraphy section. I use it all the time when I'm painting at kind of like a round brush, I guess, but I like it because it adds a lot of layering when you're using it. Maybe I'll insert a little clip of how it works up here, but yeah, I think it's super useful. And it kind of helps for the purpose of this study, because from what I can tell from looking at a lot of Arcane like concept art and stuff, it kind of seems like they just tend to use a lot of round brush and build texture with that. The first one wasn't really my favorite at this point because I wasn't really happy with how it was looking. Like, something about the lighting scenario I couldn't figure out. So I ended up going back to it later. This middle one is probably my favorite, even though you can see me giving him a black eye right now. I don't know why. It was something about the textures in this one, and it was just like really satisfying as I put it together. I'm not sure how arcane-y these look, but I'm really happy with them in general as studies anyway. Where I was really just focused on practicing textures and building textures, especially without using my texture brushes, because I love my texture brushes, but you can build much cooler effects even with the texture brushes later if you learn to do it without. And I was really trying to focus on like building the texture in his face, like the creases, the smile lines, all of that, because it adds a lot of personality, I think. But I really enjoyed doing that one. The third one was a little tough because I usually don't... I don't think I've drawn a mouth like this before, but it turned out okay. I don't like drawing teeth. I never have, so just don't look too closely at any of the teeth. And I also really like with these pictures that you can see the smile lines really well. When I look at a lot of art, I kind of see the smile lines completely left out, I guess to make things look prettier, but I don't really like that. And I really enjoy that Arcane, like, you can see all those things. There's no need to, like, wash it away. But it was a little bit difficult to figure out the right way to do it. And I was happy with how much texture I ended up getting on this face, even though in the picture, she clearly has, like, very smooth features and all, but I still managed to get lots of texture just with the regular brush pen by layering it and playing around with it and not really blending things too much. I think that's kind of why I wasn't happy with the first one, was because I think I blended some things too much, but I do go in and fix that here in a second. Also, the eyes to me were a little weird for me to draw personally, because normally I add so much detail to the eyes, and I also always do eyelashes, and like, you don't see the eyelashes in Arcane. They're kind of just like straight. They're not defined. It's not like, it doesn't look like they're wearing mascara or anything like that, but that's normally how I like to draw lashes. But yeah, here in the end you can see just a look at how I finished everything off. In the end, I kind of like the first one now that I fixed the lighting and stuff, but it still looks a little bit weird to me. But the other two, I'm pretty happy with. I don't mind them. But next up was just this painting that I wanted to do of Jinx and Echo, which is probably why it took me so long, because the studies did not take me very long. But I was just getting really lazy when I was rendering this, and I'm messy. I just had like a million layers of colors and stuff, and I did not want to go over the top of it and render it, even though it really didn't take me that long to do. But I think it's pretty important when you're doing studies to try to find a way to apply what you're learning to your own style in some sort of way. So I was kind of trying to do that with this painting. I did use the brush pen mostly for this one, but you can see with Echo's hair, I was using one of my favorite texture brushes. It's like a oil paint brush I have from this oil painting pack, which is probably one of my favorites. And I was trying to keep a lot of hard edges and texture with a lot of the things that I was doing in this painting. In the end, I was pretty happy with it. I thought it was kind of weird at some points, but I like it now. I'm not gonna go in and like try to fix anything else because that would be too much. Echo looks really cute and cute. I don't know. I think Echo looks good, and I like the expression on Jinx's face. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I think studying Arcane in general has helped me to pay attention to how I use textures. It's a lot easier for me to practice with textures when I'm doing like traditional paintings and stuff, but when you're doing digital, I think it's very easy to get carried away with blending, and that's something that can really take away from your work sometimes. I really love the rough look with lots of textures and building on it like that. I hope that I can carry that forward in my style, even with my comic. I want to be able to apply what I like to my art. But yeah, anyway, if you made it this far, thank you for listening to all my rambling. I did kind of realize that this video was just me talking about this art style. Just because I admire it so much, it might not be the most interesting thing ever, but I don't really have a lot of time to do crazy editing and stuff on videos, so it is just me talking and kind of explaining the process of how I go into things. But Anyway, I hope you have a nice day. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.